everybody, welcome to the Faith and Fandom Podcast. Hector Miray here with PFunk from Faith Head, as well as a lot of other cool things that he does and is passionate about. Before we jump into our interview, I want to take a moment to let you know that you can find other interviews and podcasts over on the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. There's lots of things from gaming to wrestling to comic books, all across various options, as well as a lot of good musical interests. So if you're interested in any of that, head on over to Love Thy Nerd Radio or the LTN Podcast Network. Or if you want to watch more, you can head over to YouTube. Each podcast has their own unique YouTube channel. So I believe this one is youtube.com/ at Faith and Fandom LTN, a whole big long list of things. Or if you have a Roku, you can head on over to the Glue Network on Roku, GLU, where you can find Christian nerdy podcast entertainment as well as other original creations. So again, excited to be joined here today by P-Funk. How you doing, man?
I'm good. It's great to be here.
Thanks, dude. So before we get into like who you are and what you create and all the things, just noticing your very articulate Star Wars collection behind you.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah,
so
it's not all of it. That's the funny part. To my left, I have all my episode 1 and episode 2 action figures, and then I got a bunch of Funko Pops down there. To my right, I've got all my Kiss action figures and Alice Cooper and Misfits and some various McFarlane toys. Kiss pretty much takes up a whole column. And
nice.
then I got some Star Trek stuff down in there. And then it's pretty much two columns here of music, and then the Star Wars starts, and then it goes through that wall. And the sad part is I haven't even got it all out yet. When we moved into this house 2 years ago, I told my wife I need a room so I can at least get my stuff out. And the bad part is I don't have it all out, and I'm already out of room. So I'm probably going to have to go up with some more shelves, or I'm going to have to lose this desk or put the desk in the middle of the room. I don't know.
I feel that immensely, and I've come to a place of it's there's not room for more at this point. It's for something to come in, something has to go out,
Right, right.
and so we do a lot of free stuff days of like we'll just find something like we'll go through and say, all right, what don't I care about anymore, and then we'll just give it away.
Oh yeah.
um
I've got a tote full of duplicates that I use because when you're buying action figures, and sometimes to get one you may have to buy a few others. So there was a when I was buying heavily, I was buying like collections or groups just to get to one or two, and then I would sell them off. So, but my wife has been aiding and abetting my criminal activity on collecting action figures for the last almost the last 20 years. So it's not all my fault.
that's a beautiful problem to have because I wouldn't know
Yeah.
how that works out. Mostly it's my family's like, where did that come from? And it's
Well,
usually
I don't do other stuff. I don't hunt, I don't fish, I don't drink, smoke, or chew, or girls with girls who do. I'm pretty square, in that sense. So I only got like two or three things in my life, and this is just one of them. Of course, my kids have kind of picked it up too. We like going to the cons and things like that. So, but in my work life, I work in the sword industry, so there's that.
there's
So
that.
I've got the whole, and I say that, how does that work? Well, I work with a lot of movie prop guys too. So, and that's so my life is a 360 180 nerd fest. So
That's a great place to be.
I think so.
So you mentioned, your different Star Wars figures. So just out the gate to ask, what's your favorite thing in Star Wars, period?
Ooh. Well, I have to confess, I'm a hardcore Boba Fett guy.
Okay.
Um, and because I'm old enough to have seen it when it came out the first time. It was just
Are
a
you
mystery
really?
to me. Yeah, believe it or not, I
How old,
am.
if you don't mind, how old are you?
I'm 49.
Okay, yeah, you were barely old enough. Okay,
Yeah,
you
yeah. I
you
was like, but you got to remember back then, way
yeah,
back then, movies stayed in theaters for a long time.
yeah.
They just didn't pop up for, 2 months, 3 months, and they rolled on. They stayed in the theaters for a while. It's a very different thing.
Oh,
So
it
I
is.
saw it a couple of times growing up in the theaters. So
The only I was born in 81, so I'm 43, and the only original that existed in my timeline was Return of the Jedi. So I
yeah,
missed out on the other two, but I mean it's close. So
yeah.
you're a big Boba Fett guy.
Oh yeah, big Boba Fett, which has graduated into the Mandalorian. I'll tell you a brief story. Um, if you look in my collection, you see episode one, you see episode two, but you don't see any episode three, Revenge of the Sith. And at the time, I was mad, I was upset, and I just refused to buy any. And everybody's like, "Why? Why did you hate it that bad?" And it was like, "Well, I had a couple of issues. Number one, I felt like we were a little duped. I thought we were going to see Vader in the suit slugging it out. So I had that because I mean the whole trailer was like him coming up on the table like Frankenstein, and I was expecting to see Vader red lightsaber slugging it out in the suit, and that was a miss. But I guess the biggest issue that I had, and this is my full nerd flag flying moment, is you talked about Return of the Jedi. Um, there's this scene in Return of the Jedi where Luke and Leia are on Endor, and she goes, "What's wrong?" He goes, "Do you remember your mother, your real mother?" Just a little bit. She died when I was very young. Like minutes after you were born. How would he not remember? It's like if I ever get a chance to meet George Lucas, I'm gonna be like, "Hey, buddy, did you ever see when you went to go write episode three? Did you ever see this movie called Return of the Jedi?" I would ask him that. It's like, you know, so and talk about missed opportunities. They could have had that in Obi-Wan. They could have fixed that glaring plot hole in Obi-Wan because then it could have been whoever she considered to be her mother. She knew she was adopted, and it would have fixed that. But I mean, Obi-Wan was just a series of missed opportunities to begin with. And that was one major plot hole they could have fixed. And there's my full Star Wars nerd flag flying.
Well, there is, I had somebody that used that argument recently and amended that as a plot hole with a piece of One Piece, like the anime. Because there was some character in One Piece, and there's an actual word for it. No, no, it wasn't that. It was the Promised Neverland, which was another anime. And where a character has full awareness from the womb,
Hmm.
and there's an actual scientific word for it for babies that come out remembering things.
Hmm.
And somebody said that's what Leia had.
Okay. Well, I don't think George wrote that in.
I don't
But
think George.
there's I could go along with that to an extent. Um, but it was just I was just really upset after Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, I don't
And I
blame you.
didn't. And I don't think I bought another piece of Star Wars merchandise um, until The Mandalorian.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I may have picked up a few little odds and ends in here, but here and there. But yeah, The Mandalorian's actually got me back to buying merch again.
All right. All right. Um, I just remember like being a teenager watching at least while I was a teenager, at least for episode one. But by the time I got to episode three, I'm just like, I don't know if I care. And then it was honestly more of my kids and the teenagers I worked with that had this younger reverence for it. And I was like, my kids watched the prequel trilogy and it was just like, this is great. I'm like, what? And that's even the thing with the who was it? The guy who plays the character from he's one of the Star Wars games, but he also voiced Maul for the animated series for Rebels.
Sam Whitmer.
Sam Whitmer, and yeah, he talks about the fact that he had to correct George Lucas on something because he was saying, when Padme was going to meet Shmi.
For the first time, and he's like, "They've already met me." Yeah, when they were doing Clone Wars. Yeah,
Yeah, and I was like,
yeah.
he didn't have it all together. Also, it's a whole big universe to hold on to. Um, so you answered like, how did you like the Boba Fett series?
Um, I was disappointed. There was most of the Star Wars, um, m most of these TV series that they're doing are missed opportunities. The first season of The Mandalorian was pure Star Wars. Second one was mostly Star Wars. The third season of Mandalorian was okay. Um, I'm not a big fan of this. I felt like a lot of it was rushed, and I think he kept. I don't know if it was Pedro Pascal and Tamora got this thing about got to have their face on camera. Boba Fett doesn't take the helmet off. That's kind of my thing, and just seeing him without his helmet so often was kind of off-putting. I, you know, I I liked the idea of it. To quote Ray Stevens from Ahsoka, I liked the idea of it, but it's like they rushed through everything, and then we got to the Power Ranger people and the mods, and I was like, okay, you could tell when they had to bring the Mandalorian in to salvage it, it was not trending well. Uh, but I really like the Mandalorian. I thought. Obi-Wan was a series of missed opportunities. Um, Ahsoka was okay. There was the one episode with Hayden, Christensen, coming back as Anakin Skywalker. That episode is the jewel of all that. The first part of it was just so boring. I just found myself struggling to pay attention. And Andor, I felt the same way. Andor, the first three episodes of Andor could have been any science fiction.
Yes.
That was my biggest issue. You don't see anything remotely Star Wars until you get to like episode 4.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a terrible mistake on their part. And I'm a purist. I'm not a sequel trilogy fan. I hung around, I hung around. I got through the Force Awakens. I bought it. I'm thinking I wasn't happy, and then I saw. I can't tell you how many times I've seen the first 6, and I can't tell you exactly. I watched the Force Awakens probably in the double digits, but I've seen uh, what's the second one in the sequel trilogy? The Last Jedi. I've seen
Hmm.
it twice, and I saw Rise of Skywalker once. So, and I'm not a fan of the sequel trilogy at all. I feel like they and again missed opportunities. Um, and it could have been great. It was headed somewhere good, but I'm going to make a faux pas here, and I'm going to make a Star Trek, Star Wars comparison. I don't know how old you were when Star Trek Generations came out,
Yeah, I
and
was
they
here. I
killed
was
off.
here for that.
Okay, when they killed off Captain Kirk. I feel like Captain Kirk and Han Solo should have died in the captain's chair. I think if Han was going to die, he should have died behind the controls of the Millennium Falcon. That's where he deserved to die, not on some stupid catwalk and some Star Wars trope and falling off into the abyss. If you're going to kill, you're going to kill your main hero, let him go out in a blaze of glory, you know. So,
The one thing on that note that I um really felt was that if anybody should have like flown their ship directly into another ship to split it in half or whatever, it should have been Akbar, not
oh
um
yeah,
Holdo. That was like my one thing. I was like,
I'll agree with that all day long. I
I was
mean,
like
it's
that.
just waste. It was all waste, in my opinion.
I've got lots of things I enjoy about it, across
I
the
was
board.
hoping, I was hoping that Finn was somehow related to Lando. I really
Yeah.
felt like that was a missed opportunity.
Well, there's no guarantee he's not,
Well, yeah,
because he
but
was he was kidnapped
but
as a child.
what really kills me about the whole sequel trilogy is that Palpatine wins. He's successful in killing off the Skywalker line. They're all dead. There's no Skywalkers left, and everybody's left to pretend. So Palpatine actually wins.
Somehow.
His granddaughter,
Palpatine.
well, his granddaughter lives, and,
So
Palpatine won. Kudos to the Empire. All right, I'm going to shut up now.
somehow Palpatine wins.
Somehow, yeah, that was like that they figured out they can't shovel the poop back into the horse at that point.
Well,
I mean,
I
Snoke, another wasted opportunity there. Could have been a clone of Palpatine, but no.
I did
Um,
appreciate them bringing the clone stuff back in Mandalorian.
yeah.
And I
Oh
felt
yeah.
like that added a little level of authenticity. And then even in some of the comics, they brought some stuff back with that as well. But
Sure.
um,
I'm
for
still waiting on
me,
000 and what's the 888 000 and what's the BT? The little psycho droids. That should have its own series right there. Missed opportunity. Dr. Afra, complete missed opportunities. You got Chrysanthemum in there.
and that's one of the things I think the sequel trilogy, and I enjoy the sequel trilogy. I think the sequel trilogy could have been a lot more cohesive if we just had one person across the board. Either let it all be Abrams or let it all be, Rain, and one or the other, because they were definitely not on the same vibe of things.
No. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like I got out of the Last Jedi. I'm like, who at Disney at Lucasfilm is watching this stuff? So when, yeah, this is great. It's like you just killed off your main villain in this, halfway through the second movie. So who's going to be the? I mean, I don't know. It was a hot mess to me. It's just a hot mess. But
So
Mandalorian. I'm anxious to see what they're doing with the Mandalorian movie.
like I know what kicked this whole question off was what was your favorite thing, which is, we got the Boba Fett. So outside of, like, is there anything beyond what we've shared? What's your least favorite thing in Star Wars?
Hmm. Other than the sequel trilogy. I don't know. I think that's about it. I mean, I kind of tolerate some of the other stuff because I will say I enjoyed Skeleton Crew. It
Skeleton
was fun.
Crew is fun. Yeah,
It was fun. It was fun. I mean, it was Goonies in space.
and
That's all it
that's
was.
all you needed. I feel like the end of Andor, or about halfway through Andor had didn't have a really entertaining thing across the board. Andor had a couple really select good performances,
Mm-hmm.
like the speech that the dude gives about sacrifice, chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Andy Serkis's speech before they go jumping out of the tower, great.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot to get through to get there.
Yeah. I mean, it's like of all the things that you have in the Star Wars universe, you decided to go with that. And one of the things that excited me about Obi-Wan is they actually pulled some stuff. Well, I guess what makes The Mandalorian great is it's written by people who know Star Wars.
Yeah,
And all this other stuff is obviously from people who don't, because, um, Filoni, he's got an idea, but it's Favreau who's pulling like the stuff from episode 1, episode 4, and episode 5, and he's dropping that stuff in there. It's like when they pulled, like in Obi-Wan, they pulled Zuckuss. If you don't know who Zuckuss is, excuse me, not Zuckuss, but Forlom. He's like one of the bounty hunter droids that's in Empire. He's got the bug eyes. He's kind
yeah.
of got like the droid body. When I saw him, I mean, I got excited. It's just there's so many opportunities to pull just little things out of the Star Wars universe and stick it in there that aren't major to make these things great. It's like when I saw R5D4, I flipped out. It's like one of my favorite droids. And it's like then now they've stuck him in Mandalorian. And I was like, how can you not love it? How can
I
you not
feel
love
like Filoni has a better handle on it than Favreau, but like just it's the opportunities to execute it aren't as big for him because like with Mandalorian, like you know, Favreau had a blank check to do whatever he wanted because nobody was doing anything really at that point with Star Wars. Past they were like giving it, him a shot because he knew what he was doing. I
it?
feel
Right.
like I would probably trust Filoni more with anybody or with Star Wars more than anybody if you gave him the ability to pick who he worked with and without reining him in.
Well, I think the difference between Filoni and Favreau is that when Filoni was working with Lucas, they were creating new things within the Star Wars universe. Clone Wars, they were creating new characters. I mean, if you, it doesn't matter. Clone Wars is all about Ahsoka.
Yeah,
No matter how you slice it, it's all about Ahsoka. It all comes back to Ahsoka. Even after she leaves, it's all about her coming back. So you got that story arc there. So Filoni has, I mean, he is used to working in Star Wars and coming up with new things. Where Favreau is an outsider who's pulling from his favorites and making it. I think that's the biggest difference. Filoni's used to creating within the universe, and Favreau is like just going back to what he loved about Star Wars to make it awesome. So
yeah.
I
I
I,
will.
I
I do still really stand by that. I think that Clone Wars gave us the best like fleshing out of Anakin over the
oh yeah,
over
oh
the
yeah,
over the prequel trilogy, comparatively speaking. But I don't know. It was good stuff, and that's one of the things about Star. Like I really do like about Star Wars is like everybody isn't gonna love everything, but I think there's something people can love if they're looking for it, um, even if it's just certain parts of it.
yeah. I mean,
So,
I'm an OG purist. I won't lie.
so you just you have to be careful where you draw your lines. So you're like an
Yeah,
OG purist, but you're accepting of one and two.
OT. Yeah, no, I've grown to appreciate three. I'll watch Revenge of the Sith, and I just have to overlook the plot hole for now, and the fact that I think that we were lied to back then. Of course, you got to remember, that it was the first movie. I mean, we all had to tolerate Jar Jar because the droids weren't in there. Because and this is the key thing. Everybody thinks about Star Wars, Han, Luke, and Leia, but it's really their story told through the eyes of R2D2 and C3PO. Because that when Lucas was doing his original concept, it was based off on old Japanese movies where you had like the foot soldiers who were watching, like the samurai, it was told from the low class perspective, or the how I guess however you say it, from the lower strata of society. And that's because it started with them. I
Yeah,
mean, the whole Star Wars story started with two droids, and it really should have ended with the two droids because they're the ones telling the story
right. Well, they're still out there so far,
so far, somewhere in a
somewhere.
galaxy far, far away.
All right, so you are the lead singer of the band Faithhead.
Lord,
Um,
no.
huh?
Lord, no.
No,
No, I'm not the lead singer.
you're
I'm the
not the
bass
lead
player.
singer. You're the bass
No,
player.
I'm
Oh
the
man,
bass
I
player.
thought you told me you were the lead singer. I listened. I
No,
should have watched the video. Um,
no,
so you were
no,
the
that would be Jimmy Webb.
okay. So that the P Funk makes more sense on the bass.
Mhm.
Nice.
There you go. You can
So
edit that out.
nah, that's all perfect.
I'm
Um,
taking your job, Jimmy.
I mean, it could be. It's the line from Almost Famous. We agreed on this dynamic. I was going to be the front man, and you be the guitarist with Mystique.
There you go. I love it, baby.
Oh, it's my favorite. It's my literal top.
Almost famous.
is my top movie of all time. Um,
My favorite line in there when he's talking to the guy from what's the magazine?
Cream or Rolling
Yes,
Stone.
yeah. Seymour Hoffman when he's talking to him is like, "Buddy Rock's dead, and all that's left is, this. What you're seeing now is the last death throes, and something." And he
The
really
last
said,
gasp, the death
"Yeah."
rattle.
He goes, "Well, at least I'm here for that."
I
That's
come in
my
on that
favorite line. At least I'm
that
here for that.
and that's I feel that way about a lot of things. It's like, whenever I'm missing an opportunity, I'm like, well, at least I'm here for this part. So
Yeah,
I love
that's how I feel about the music scene right now. Anyway, so at least I'm here for its death rattle.
so I would I this is my almost famous passion level. They opened a Broadway musical in 2022, let's say two. Um, I can't read it because there's an action figure in front of it. They opened a Broadway musical in 2022. I bought a ticket to the first show, flew to New York,
Wow.
watched the first ever performance of the Broadway musical, and then Cameron Crowe was hanging out in the back row, and we got to talk after the show about music and everything else. And it's like then I got back on a plane and flew back, and it's just like,
Wow.
and then it promptly got canceled. It's the first show was October 3rd, and it was gone by like January 8th.
Grand opening, grand closing.
Yeah,
Broadway's
uh,
tough.
it is, but I was happy to see it, and I got to meet Cameron Crowe. But no, I love Almost Famous. So you're the bass player for Faith Head.
There you
How
go.
long have y'all been around? Like, how'd y'all get started?
Uh, we played our first show in April of 2016.
Okay.
Um, so we've been around. Come this April, we'll be around 9 years. We've been around. We've been kicking around. So, but yeah. It for me. It really started in 2015. I just gotten out of a couple of bands, Christian metal. First one was a Christian alt rock band, and then the other one was like a core band. And I was kind of like, do I want to keep doing this? And God sent me because I was waiting on God for kind of give me a clue what I needed to do, and He sent me the sounds kind of dramatic, but the vision for the Faith Head band. But that's the truth. You can read all about it on our webpage, faithhead.com. But yeah, it was the first thing I could honestly say in my life that God gave me a vision to do. So this is, the last 9 years have been me trying to fulfill that vision the best I can. So,
So what is the classification for Faith Head?
well, some people call us hard rock, some people call us alternative, some call us metal. In Europe, we're more alternative. So I guess it depends on where you are in the world. Our last album, The Horror of Things to Come, is probably our heaviest album that we've ever done. Um, Without a doubt, it's got some doom elements. It's got some couple of songs with some thrash elements. I'm a fan of. I'm like an old school Misfits fan. I like Alice Cooper. Um, I hate to say it, I grew up listening to the big four, Slayer, Anthrax, Metallica, and Megadeth. So those are kind of my roots. Black Sabbath, obviously, is one of my, one of the earliest bands that I listened to. So kind of that impending doomy kind of stuff is kind of what I have a tendency to write. So, and on this last album where I pretty much spearheaded 90% of the songwriting, that's kind of what you get. So some of our earlier stuff kind of is more alternative. So we kind of we kind of claim no genre because we slide back and forth between different ones. Um, and I think that's because we don't like to get boxed in. We got one song called When the Dominoes Fall, and it's got slide guitar on it. So, it's kind of twangy. And then, we've got some songs that are, drop A. So it all depends. It depends on what mood that we're in is what genre we're claiming at the moment.
What would you say is your most comparable band?
Oh
And
man, that's
I know we're unique creations and bands, especially so.
no, I
But
understand. Yeah, we're so unique. No, I think when we started out, we kind of had a bit of a Soundgarden feel. Right now, I don't know what to compare us to. The fun part was is when we first came out, where I am in Tennessee, growing up, there was a I didn't know. I mean, to me, outside of like White Cross and Bride and like DeGarmo and Key, I didn't know there were anything heavier than that. So when people started comparing us to bands like Deliverance and some of these others, old Christian metal bands I'd never heard of, it was kind of an opportunity for me to go, oh, okay. Because I didn't think, I didn't, it was, what's the one from Australia that everybody talks about? Tourniquet. Someone said to
mhm.
me, that's kind of got a tourniquet feel to it. I'm like, who's Tourniquet? So,
In my youth group days, the only like Christian metal band we could have named would have been Demon Hunter. That's been
yeah,
it.
yeah, it's been a minute. But yeah, back in the late 80s, early 90s, it was a thin selection. So I never heard of Tourniquet until probably 2 or 3 years after I started Faithhead. I'm like, oh, here's this band I never heard of. So it's been interesting. That sounds weird, but I mean, I just didn't listen. I mean, I just didn't. Our Christian music store, bookstores, I mean, that was a thing back
Back
then.
when that was
Didn't
the thing,
have
yeah.
they weren't ordering tourniquet. You're getting whatever they had. So, like, I think I'll just go listen to Megadeth and Slayer. Because there wasn't anything faster or heavier, so that I could find.
I one of my vivid youth group memories was um, my youth pastor was like in the mindset of breaking CDs of anything that had electric guitars in it and that whole thing, and it was that kind of party. And
Wow, nice.
exact quote I remember hearing, um, "We're gonna listen to Jars of Clay. It's a bit heavy,
That's
but I think
great.
it's worth it." And I just remember looking at him like, "What?" And he said, but he was of the firm foundation of saying anything with an electric guitar was the devil. So there's that. So you guys have been at this almost a decade.
Hmm.
Lots of projects out or lots of content created. Um, do you have a favorite show you've played?
Um, I don't know. There's been a few. I enjoyed our last. I enjoyed our last run that we did back in the fall. I think our my favorite show when we were tired. It was like our last night on our run. We played at the Good Fight in Huntington, Arkansas. We were exhausted, but we were just like all right, this is all we got left. We were putting it out on the stage, and before that, we did 2 nights at Nehemiah Fest out in Kansas City. That was good. I had some technical issues. I left my pedal board out in the sun, and it my power supply said I'm a little too hot, so it kind of screwed me up there. But I'll know in the future not to leave it. I had to hide. I'm gonna have to hide my pedal board in the future in the shade. So, but other than that, our last run was pretty good. So it wasn't too shabby.
What has because the last decade of music isn't like what I grew up with or what you grew up with in terms of like how music is released. Um, how has that process been for you for putting music out, for getting consumed? Like, were you trying CDs at any point? Was it all digital? Like, where are you at with that process?
Well, we've released our last EP with new music was in 2019, and then we did Born Again, which was kind of in 2020, which was kind of like a recycling of the first album because when we did our first album, we had just played our first show. Well, let me back up even further. So when we first came out in 2016, we released our first single called "Go Into the Mountain," and it was the strangest thing. Um, I sent it around here in the States and got nothing. And I sent it into Europe, and there was a man named John Carthew who had Christian Metal Meltdown in the UK. He's gone on to be with the Lord. Um, and John Carthew played us on Christian Metal Meltdown in the UK, and it just kind of took off. And then radio stations over in Europe and Germany started picking us up, and then people here in the States decided, hey, I like this European band called Faith Head. It's like, no, we're from Tennessee. So, and then it kind of all snowballed from there. But it was like we were doing the home studio route at first. I had a home studio. Jason had a home studio. Jason Beavers, who was the original lead singer. I'd work on stuff. I'd send it down to him, and then we would get it together, and then we'd release a single, and we released another single. And they're like, "Great, you got any more music?" I was like, "Okay." And then we did another song, and then it was like, "Hey, you got another music?" So I get it. You got another single? I'm like, we just gave you three songs, so we kind of went to the studio to record our first album out of necessity, and half those songs on the first album were collaborations, and the other half were songs that I wrote to kind of get the band started. Because when you start a band with, well, what are we going to play? Well, everybody goes to covers first, and then it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. So I kind of had an album sort of written, you know, or at least I had a handful of tracks to kind of get us started. So Going to the Mountain was kind of like the first one, and that song was, I hate to use this. Kid Rock had this anthem said, on his first album, I'm going platinum. Well, Going to the Mountain was kind of like my anthem. I'm going to the mountain, going to have my moment of transfiguration up there. But it was kind of the song that kind of kicked the whole thing off. But by the time we were out on the road for 3 or 4 years, the songs had really changed from that first album. That were literally just, I don't want to call them demos, but they were untested and untried. It was just things that I wrote in a vacuum. And when we got out on the road and started playing them and kind of rearranging them to make them, a little bit more appealing, to people to listen to, in a live setting, they had changed. So we did Born Again. So we pretty much just struggled, with lineup changes and um, for like 4 years, and then at the end of 2022, I finally said, enough's enough. We're going, it's been 2 years. We've been dropping singles left and right. We're gonna do an album, and I started working on the album, and became the Horror of Things to Come. And the lineup kind of firmed up at the end of 2023. So, and then we dropped it in 2024. So it's been a struggle, and I think it's probably the new album's probably the best thing that we've ever put out. And I have to give credit where credit's due. Um, Jimmy came in and did a great job on vocals, but a lot of credit goes to LeBron Estrada, who is a guitarist, and when he first came in, he was just going to help us record and mix and master and all that, and then he wound up joining the band, which was a blessing in itself. But LeBron put in countless hours mixing and mastering and retracking. And I'm a bass player who can play guitar. But when I handed off my riffs to LeBron, who has that nuance as a guitar player, he really put the guitar's spin on it and the essence, and really took a lot of my good ideas and made them great. So, I have to credit him with a lot of, tweaking. And poor Dale, man, I think he thought we were trying to kill him. Dale's our drummer. I think he thought we were trying to kill him there for a while, but it's our heaviest and most technical album that we've ever put out. And we are a live band. We don't play to tracks. We're not singing karaoke up there to, studio stuff. When you hear us, warts and all, you're getting a live show. It's as ugly as it can be, mistakes and everything, but it's real. And none of my heroes would do what a lot of people in Christian music and music now in general are doing. But we're a live band, and when we stand up there and play, we make a mistake, at least it's real. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
No, that's a great answer. So you said you had a vision for this, and you've been at it a while. So to ask this question, what determines to you if your band is a successful band?
Well, I've never, it's never been monetary, that's for sure. You know, to me, the success of Faith Head has been the impact, and it sounds cheesy, but it's been the impact on people's lives. And I don't get out on social media and tout all that stuff. I think that's a private thing between us and who we encounter and who we minister to. And but we've got some stories to tell. Um, there were times when I wondered if we were casting our pearls before swine, because our ministry is a lot about going into places where most Christian artists can't or won't play. So that's like bars and all kinds of whatever nook and cranny place will have us. That's where we've gone. And over the years, there were times when we'd be up, we'd be playing, and there's some guy blasted out of his mind. He's like, "Y'all are the effing best band in the world. You're effing great." And it was like, does he know we're talking about Jesus here? And I've had a few moments of doubts along the way, and it all kind of ended when I guess it was back in 2019, when we did a show at this little dive bar place up in Nashville. And and it was a St. Patrick's Day show. Christian band, dive bar, St. Patrick's Day. So we took just like 2 minutes out of the set, and I was like, "Do you know why we're here today? While you're drinking green beer and all this?" And I kind of told the story of St. Patrick, how he was captured as a slave, escaped, and compassion went back to Ireland to minister to him. The whole spiel. And when I was all said and done, there's Donnie was playing music in the background, and it was a nice moment. But I was thinking to myself, well, I just wasted 3 minutes of my life that I will never get back. So about a month goes by, and we get a message from the owner of the place who loved us, who loved having us there. I guess if he didn't, he wouldn't keep inviting us back. But um, he said, "Hey, I just want you to know, so and so passed away shortly after y'all's show, and I thought, y'all would like to know that." And I was thinking to myself the entire time, it's like, God loved that person so much that he sent us there to present the gospel one last time. So I've never really questioned that part of it. And look, if you look at the finances of Faithhead, it doesn't really make sense. But no good ministry financially makes sense. I mean, we're not
Not at all.
rich. It doesn't make sense what we do, and it never has. I mean, we've come off the tours before and been breaking even, and I consider that a success. But we've walked out, people's salvation experience. I could tell stories there. Um, in July of 2019, speaking of 2019, we should have died in our wreck that we had. Um, we were starting our first real tour, and on day one, blew out a tire in my Yukon, flipped our trailer. I just bought this brand new trailer, $3,000, and now it's a Pringles can on the side of the road. So fortunately, I got my money out of the insurance company, but that took forever. So, but you know, if I learned anything on that tour, God was in control. And I know that's this thing that people say, God's in control. And I think a lot of times it gets said, to fake it until you make it. But we were literally, it was like midnight. we had to make a decision because if we did not leave, we had to get a no, we had to get a trailer because we had to, to keep the tour going. We missed our Memphis date, and but we were going to be played on the radio in Texas the next day. Our show was going to be simulcast across multiple radio stations, so we had to do it. And everybody was like, everybody was trying to get us to go home. I'm like, no, man, we're determined we're going to do this. So we managed to find a U-Haul trailer, and we got back on the road. We drove for 3 or 4 hours, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. We slept maybe 2 or 3 hours. Then we had to make like a 14 or 16-hour drive, San Angelo, Texas. And we hit Dallas at 5 o'clock on a Friday. We did not stop. We kept going. We were an hour late, but it was fine. It all worked. It all got worked out. But I can't say I ever saw God part the Red Sea, but I have seen him part Dallas Fort Worth traffic.
I mean, that's equally a miracle.
Yeah. And I've been a frequent visitor of Dallas for many years, and I was sitting there going, "Oh my goodness, we're not." It's just like it's all. I'm just like it's all in your hands, God. It's all in your hands, God. Because the other part about that show, not only was it being simulcast, it was like the biggest payday for us on that tour. That was going to basically fund the rest of the tour.
Mm.
And then God showed up and showed up after that, and people just blessed us everywhere we went. So of all, even though it was the most stressful time, it was probably the most real time that I ever experienced that God was involved in this thing. So
That's awesome, man. So to ask you, if there is any other artist or band you could play with, like a one-time show or a tour, who is there another group or individual you would want to do a show with?
I don't know. We just recently met Matt Moore. We did a show at Nehemiah Fest, and I never really met him before. And he paid us a compliment on stage and got to know him and his band and his people. So they seem like they'd be fun to go out on the road with.
I
Um,
genuinely enjoy him as a person. So
yeah, yeah. I didn't. I mean, I never really, there's bands that we've shared the stage with. Um, but there's some, it's weird. Before Faith had, I was in a band called Covered Scars, and um, we opened for like Thousand Foot Crutch, Love and Death, and The Wedding, and it was a local show, and and since we were it was like they didn't really want us there, or like the tour manager didn't want us there. I should say that, not necessarily the bands. The only people, the only band of those three bands that would hang out with us was the guys from Love and Death and Brian Head Welch. They were the only ones. Valentine was the bass player, and the drummer is Dan Johnson, who played with Red. He eventually went on to play with Red, and he's doing his on something else now. But and CJ, they were the only ones that hung out with us backstage. And Brian, that's funny. I was never a Corn fan, but I got a picture of my oldest daughter with Brian Head Welch, and I go, one day you might appreciate this.
yeah,
She's
yeah,
like, there
that's
she is. He's got her arm around her, and she's like, who is this person? So, but anyways, they were Love and Death was probably the coolest, you know, pro level people. I wouldn't mind if he ever fired that up again with that crew. That would be good time. So,
nice, man. So beyond just what you do with Faithhead, and you mentioned previously you also make swords. Let's talk about that. How's that
well,
work out for you?
I don't make anything
You don't
personally.
Okay.
I don't make it, other than trouble. Now, I work for a company called Casa, and we're celebrating 40 years in the industry. And
Ooh,
yeah, we've been around for a long time. Um, you see our swords in everything, and you just don't know that it's us. Um, I've worked with a lot of prop people over the years. Um, all right, let's see how your movie knowledge goes. All right, first Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
yeah.
You've got Orlando Bloom handing a sword to the governor to present to the Commodore as a gift. And he goes, "This is a folded steel blade." Blah blah blah. It wasn't a folded steel blade. But that was a reproduction of George Washington's ceremonial sword that we made.
Nice.
So the Matrix 2 movie, Morpheus, the katana that he has, that's ours. So I'm going to pull it forward a little, maybe about 10 years ago, the television show Grimm. You remember watching Grimm?
Yeah.
Okay. The big double bladed axe that he
I was about to
has
say
in
I
that.
remember an axe for that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the double blade. That's our Heroes axe, XH1074. We had a bunch of stuff in James Bond to Die Another Day. Had a ton of stuff in that. And we were talking about the Mandalorian, and I've been friends with this. His name's Tony Swanton. He's got a website called The Sword and Stone. Tony's the prop guy for Mandalorian, so I'm no Tony. If he's ever looking for anything, any parts, he calls me up. But Sword and the Stone.com, I think it's what it is. But he's got a shop out in Burbank. He works with all the movies. He works with Disney. He works with ton of people. And I've worked with Tony on a lot of stuff over the years. So, but yeah, I mean, we have something and everything. Back, and I'll get really nerdy with you. Back during when The Sims first came out, you remember The Sims?
Yeah.
They had a little Japanese suit of armor in The Sims, that you could buy, and it was a rendering of our full size Japanese suit of armor that we sold.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. Because I was playing The Sims, I'm like, that's our OH 2883. So, man, yeah. But I could go on and on forever. Did you ever see the Electra movie with Jennifer Gardner?
No, I saw Daredevil. I
Well,
didn't
no
see
one else
Elektra.
did either, and we had a ton of stuff in it. So, yeah,
I saw her in Deadpool and Wolverine.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Underworld. I always forget about that. I'm sitting here looking at signed. I got signed DVDs and posters from Kate Beckinsale. I worked on Underworld too. That was a good. Actually got to read the script for Underworld too before it went into production.
so you don't make the stuff. So what's your role and how'd you get involved with that?
Well, uh, well, my current role is a product marketing manager. I do product development, which means I kind of look at our product line and figure out kind of where to fill the holes. Um, if you've ever if you're a sword person, if you know anything about swords or you know anything about the sword industry, Cass Iberia should ring a bell. And if you ever heard the name Paul Chen or Hanwei, it's probably one of the premier sword lines in the world. I started working for Cass in 1999, and I worked there until 2006. So, and then I went away for about 9 years, and I came back in 2015. Um, how I got the job was the craziest story in the world. I got out of college, and I was working at the newspaper Chattanooga Times Free Press, and I worked in special the I guess it's called special projects, and I worked on a retail, or not a retail, but a real estate magazine that was kind of like 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So I was letting my film run on my magazine, and I was sitting there going looking through when you're at the newspaper, what do you do when you got anything to do? You read the
The
newspaper.
newspaper. Yeah.
So I'm sitting there going through the classified ads, and I see marketing coordinator, catalog, website, photography, graphic design, blah 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 blah, Bakewell, Tennessee. Now, Bakewell, Tennessee is like in the middle of nowhere. It's between like it's like 30 miles north of Chattanooga and like 10 miles south of Dayton. I mean, it's just and it's where it's like the 30-second run through from where I grew up. I'm like Bakewell, Tennessee. I go, what? Mom and Pop's Jams and Quilts is going pro. So I set my resume in as a goof, a complete goof, as a joke. Some ridiculous salary and needed this and needing that. So I stuck my resume in the mail and forgot all about it. So about 2 or 3 weeks later, I get this phone call. It's like, yeah, we got your resume. Like for you to come in for an interview. And I'm literally I come pull into this office, office space attached to this warehouse, like where I'd like farmed as a kid, like baled hay, cut hay, and for like all my life. And then there's this building. It's got all these swords and all these replica guns and suits of armor. And it was just crazy. It was like right here in my backyard. And I'm like, yeah, and that's, completely got into it unintentionally. And it's been my career for, the last, 25 years, completely on accident.
That's bonkers.
It is bonkers. When
So
I tell it, it's completely bonkers.
so let's ask this: what would you have been doing had you not done that?
I don't know, to be honest with you. When I was working at the newspaper, I was, I was, I don't know, I'm still probably doing some sort of graphic layout and design or something like that. At the time, I was, I was trying to audition for bands out on the West Coast. I was planning on moving, and you know, I got, I've had a couple of real professional opportunities, or to at least to try, for some decent stuff, but it's never really worked out. So I guess that's all a part of the God's plan for my life. But I don't know. I don't ever think like that. I might have, at some point, maybe I've always wanted to join the military, but I never did. Uh, so I don't know. I don't look back too often unless I'm trying to figure out if I need to do a course correction.
So has Faith Head and your armament business ever crossed? Have you used props?
No, I haven't. That's the funny part. I've talked about it before, and I'm sure my company is actually very supportive uh, of me. When I have to go out on the road for a week at a time or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, it's I've never figured out how to blend the two. Um, I like to keep my work life separate from my band life, and my band life separate from my real life and my family life. So it's I'm incredibly blessed in the sense that my wife goes, she'll tell, so what, with people ask, well, what does your husband do? Oh, he works for a solar company. It's a real job. This is kind of what she says. It's a real job. And I'm like, she works for Blue Cross Blue Shield. I'm like, she does data analytics. It's a real job. So, but yeah, she's always been supportive of my musical endeavors, but she does have her limits. But
So what do the rest of the Faith Head members do, like outside of music?
well, Jimmy is an accountant. I think he just got a job being. I don't know if he's changed title. He was CFO. I don't know what his new title is at this new company. So he's going to be like president of operations or something like that. So he's a big wig. He's our guitarist. LeBron's kind of in between stuff right now. He's been doing carpentry work. Um, so he's been trying to. LeBron did such a good job on our album. He's been trying to get more recording work. So if you're in the Southeast area or if you just want to mix or something like that, I would definitely reach out to LeBron. He did a really good job. So we're trying to get him positioned where he can do more recording and things like that. Tyler Anderson, who's our other guitarist, he does like purchasing, and he used to do logistics, and now he's doing like purchasing for a logistics company. And Dale, he is Dale is a hunter. And so when deer season rolls around, we always know we won't see Dale for about 3 months. So that's usually about at the end of October. Everybody kind of breaks for the holidays, and he goes to slaughter Bambi. So and then he cuts deer at night. And then right now Dale is a cancer survivor. So uh, he's been trying to his cancer's in remission, but he's right now he's just kind of enjoying life. So
That's good. So you had, if you wanted anybody to know anything else about you or Faithhead, what would you want them to know?
great question. What
Also,
would I
add on question to that, or before or separate. Uh, if people were going to give one Faithhead song a first listen, which song would it be as well?
Well, that's a good one. If you're um if you're a non-believer, I would say listen to Mercy and Grace off her new album for sure. I don't know. There's a it all depends on what you like. Um, Believer's Revolution, I would always say it's kind of like our number one stream song on Spotify, um, followed by Mindless Automatons off the Genesis album.
Such a good word.
Uh, mhm. I don't know. It all depends on what you're in the mood for. We got a little bit of something for everybody. Um, I would listen to the new album. I think it's pretty good. Um, Genesis is I think we were headed musically in a direction with Genesis, and then we kind of got off the path, and then we kind of finished telling that story with the horror of things to come. But Revolution is off Born Again. I think is probably going to flip a lot of people's trigger. Um, the new album for me is we have on the first album I would say Under the Blood was our Turn or Burn song. If you know some good church language there, Turn or Burn, that was our Turn or Burn song. And I think this whole album here is Turn or Burn. Don't Invite Them In, which is our latest single. That one's a good one. It's a fun one. If you like something a little bit more upbeat, if you like doomy kind of stuff and dark, definitely the title track, The Horror of Things to Come. One of my favorites is the song God Didn't Kill Himself. Some Christians will probably flinch a little bit when they hear that title, but read some lyrics and don't judge the book by its cover. It's probably one of my favorites off the album. Not because it's just bass centric, but because it's not a single.
Right.
There's a lot. If there's anything I kind of despise about the Christian rock or the our genre, it's all about singles. Because nobody's buying music, so the only way to get people's attention to sell merch is to do singles because there's no return on your investment by recording an album, especially in a professional studio. But to me, I don't care for singles. I like albums. I've always liked albums.
Same.
There's just something about it's like a hamburger. The meat tastes great, but once you add the pickle and the onion and you got that crunch, it's all kind of comes together. When I think of some of my favorite albums of all time, or when I think about some of my favorite music, I don't think about singles. I think about albums.
Yeah.
And that's something, I guess with the resurgence of vinyl, it's something I guess, this generation may get a taste of. When you and I were kids, we'd go to the record store, long before streaming. Streaming, I think, has killed the whole music experience and
It's
discovering music.
even with the beyond just the streaming, because for the longest time, like I think I was buying music digitally when it stopped being physical.
Yeah.
Now it's even gotten to the point that the stuff I've bought digitally, they're taking back. Like
Mm.
I've been, if I bought digital music anywhere from 2006 until yesterday, I bought it on Amazon Music.
Mm.
And that's where I bought it. So I'd have a full library, and I DJ. So knowing I've got this song in my arsenal is always good. I've got a computer right here that's got literally every song I've owned ever, because
Yeah.
I took my giant CD portfolio, loaded it in there. Um, but like I've had albums that I purchased over 10 years ago, and they'll say, "Well, you don't own it anymore," and like they'll remove it from my albums.
That's crazy.
And so I have to go back to the day I bought it, pull the purchase order number, get on the phone with customer services. I purchased this. I own it. Put it back in my inventory.
Yeah. See, that's just the thing. I still buy CDs. I know it sounds crazy.
Oh,
I
if I
still buy
can, I
them.
do.
Yeah, I do. I mean, and it's just like when we were talking about movies earlier, if you don't buy the physical product, it's like one of my favorite franchises is the Predator movies. I love Predator. I like the aliens too. Uh, you know, of course, it's kind of if you're an '80s kid, those were kind of the big sci-fi slash horror movies. But it's like I tell my kids, I go, if you do not buy into the franchise, they will not continue to make stuff that you like. So eventually I will go and buy Prey. I loved Prey. I thought Prey was good, but there's something about actually owning something.
Yeah.
There I don't, it's like, oh, I paid $50 for these albums. Well, where are they? You can't touch them, and then you run the risk of, what happens if you bought it on whatever streaming service? What happens if that streaming service goes away? You have nothing.
All the people that invested in Title.
Yeah. Yeah. Title. Yeah. I don't know. And if I had one wish, and this if I could put one of our albums on vinyl, it would be this one because sonically it sounds so good in a good studio monitor. And the only way you're ever going to hear that solid sound is if it was coming from an LP. And and listening to it on CD is good, but it's just not as sonically good as if it were coming out on vinyl.
Mm.
Maybe. So maybe if I do another band, we're only going to do vinyl. One song stream, you have got to buy the rest of it on vinyl. It may not be a
So
good business model for us, but we'll
unless for
ride with
Taylor
it.
Swift,
Yeah, there you go.
because what I think the whatever the last album she dropped sold more vinyl than digital purchases.
Yeah,
That's just
it's awesome to see digital doing well, or I mean vinyl doing well again. I think
yeah.
it's awesome.
Because yeah, my 14-year-old wants a K-pop band vinyl, and I'm like, okay, that's like I'll work on that.
Yeah. Well, first we got to get you a record player.
Yeah, which we've got that. She just I was like I've never seen this band in a store ever, but okay. Um, so
Well, growing up, getting back on our nerd thing, I remember being, in elementary school, looking at all these great album covers, of all this great album artwork, like Iron Maiden, Somewhere in Time, just enthralled me, just the album artwork. And, that's just, you don't get the same experience with like a CD
mm-mm.
like you would a vinyl record.
Well, it's even if they do something digital, because I want to say it was 21 Pilots' last album, which they'd still have some artwork, but they released a 128 page photo download
Wow.
booklet if you bought like some special version of it or whatever, but it had 128 pages of actual artwork and liners, and I'm just like, that's great, but who's gonna browse through a PDF of this?
Yeah. Well, back in the day, back when I was a kid, I mean, I mean, I loved reading all the liner notes and all that stuff.
The thank
Uh,
yous, the everything.
yeah, I mean, I read it all, and as a musician, this is how you learned, what gear they used, what strings they play. They use this is it was consumerism at its best. Because they had those things in there, so oh well, they're playing such and such guitars. So if I want to sound like those guys, I got to go buy such and such
I
guitar and buy
I
such and such
promise you,
strings.
I'm playing on the same certain strings
Yeah,
of bands from like 1999, 2000 because of that.
yeah.
Um, so anything else you would want people to know about your band or you before we roll out for the evening?
What I would like for them to know is that Faith Head, we are a 501(c)(3). If you feel so inclined, you can make a charitable tax deductible donation. Go to faithhead.com and there is a donate uh, button. But more, I'd love for you to go shop our merch shop. That would help us because none of that money goes into our pockets. All that money goes into the next tank of gas, the next hotel room that we got to pay for, or whatever. There was only one time I had to tell some. I try not to tell people no when they ask us to go somewhere or do something, but it was in the middle of COVID, and we were talk about when you make plans, God laughs. I was at the end of 2019. I'm like, 2020 is going to be our year, and we had done like 30 plus shows, and we were just so on fire and ready to go, and then March hits and COVID locks everything down. I'm like, well, I guess I was wrong about that. But they were wanting us to come back out to Oklahoma, and there was no money in the bank to make that full round trip, and the way they wanted us to do it. So I hate to say no. And any money that we ever make stays in the bank so we can go somewhere where somebody can't have us come and minister and play. So again, it's not a great business model, but it's what the Lord's called us to do.
Oh, trust me, I so with what I do with Faith and Fandom is a lot of setting up a booth at Comic Cons and maybe doing geeky church services, but it's a lot of on the go and the self funded stuff. And my uncle is my CPA,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "What you're spending versus what you're bringing in is not a functional business." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm aware."
Yeah, but it's not business, it's
Right.
ministry. And think that's the failing of a lot of churches. They say we got to run this like a business. Well, I think you should be good stewards of your money and spend it wisely, but I think that's, you got a lot of people who are empire building and not necessarily building kingdom building.
That's one of our phrases around like with my leadership team is like we're building kingdoms, not castles.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
our mindset with that. Well, dude,
But
thank you.
no, but other than that, I mean, look, we're none of us are perfect. I guess this would be the other thing. We're not perfect. We don't orb around with praying hands with glowing halos over our heads. We're just as screwed up as you are, or you think that we are, probably worse. We're just human beings put on a live raw rock show for Jesus.
With strong Star Wars opinions.
I have strong Star Wars opinions. You probably need to do like something before the episode. Be careful, you may be triggered by strong Star Wars opinions.
I have friends who absolutely will be, but it's okay, you know.
Well, in the end, just so they know they're wrong. He's the fandom menace.
Ba ba ba. That's so. I had a friend who had a podcast called that the Fandom Menace.
Hmm.
Oh, that's cute.
You know what? I'm just gonna say this, and I'm gonna declare a truce here. My biggest issue with the sequel trilogy is that it doesn't end with hope. There is no hope in any of those movies. You're looking for hope, but there is no hope, and that's my biggest issue because Palpatine wins.
I feel like there's a little hope at the end of the last one because like the kids are able to start accessing the Force again in a smidge.
Maybe we'll see. Somehow the Force has returned.
How the Force has returned. But that's just the last update I saw this past week was that the trilogy that's about to follow is going to take place 5 to 6 years after the sequel trilogy. So huzzah.
Yeah,
We'll
well,
see. We'll
probably
see
gonna be
if
the first series of Star Wars movies I won't go see in the theater.
oh, I believe in you. I think you'll see it once just to check your box.
I don't know. I didn't watch The Acolyte. I refused.
I watched just for I wanted to see how it went down. And I'll say this, out of anything else for the Acolyte's sake, because I know there's a lot of people with strong opinions on it that did watch it. It has maybe one of the most gnarly lightsaber fights I've ever seen. I want to say it's episode 5. Um, and some a ship of Jedi arrived to look for a missing Jedi, and the main villain of the series just mollywops them. And uh, there's stuff that happens with a lightsaber I've never seen happen anywhere else.
Mm.
And I was like, if nothing else, that scene should make a highlight reel.
Well,
But
I love the books, the Darth Plagueis book,
yeah,
and I think if they don't get Tom Hiddleston to play a young Palpatine and just do that, they could make that whole book a trilogy of movies. That would be awesome.
yeah.
So,
So where can people find you and follow you guys?
sure. You can find us at faithhead.com. We're on all your major streaming services. Um, you can find us on social media at Faithhead Band, wherever you get them internets. You can find us there on Instagrams, on the YouTuber, and on Twitter, or I guess it's X now. X, X,
X Force.
Facebook, the usual suspects. I think we got a TikTok, but we ain't posting on that. But I think we had a Snapchat at one point, but I never snapped or chatted on it. But no, we're faithhead.com. We'll take you wherever you want to go to find us. Write us, insult us, whatever. I'll be glad to respond.
And I think you guys are in the rotation on Love Thy Nerd Radio already.
Yeah, I think so. Well, that's the rumor. That's what I was told. But no, I appreciate you, Hector, taking the time to talk to me and nerd out with me. It's always good to be able to talk, about faith and nerd stuff together. And I consider it a privilege to be able to connect with my fellow nerds. And as you can see, I've got plenty of nerd stuff. I mean, I didn't even get to talk about my Masters of the Universe collection.
Oh no. See, that could be a whole other podcast,
Yeah,
especially with the new movie coming.
yeah. The cast is very interesting, but
I'm excited about Allison Brie, and I'm kind of excited about Idris Elba. I don't know about everything else, but
yeah, yeah, yeah. I if you remember the Dolph Lundgren one,
oh,
and
I
like,
do.
oh, I was like, oh my goodness, what was that?
Like that was like a fever dream for me. Like there'd be years in my childhood I'd be like, did I imagine that movie? Nope, that's real. Okay, because
Kind of like that.
Skeletor,
It's kind of like that Shaq movie that we all remember seeing, but we really didn't.
that we Mandela affected. Yes,
Yes,
because that was
yes,
real. I
yeah.
remember watching the trailer for that in middle school. Remember that Fantastic Four movie that never actually got released?
Oh yeah,
I
Um,
remember watching a movie in middle school gym on the cart that they rolled out,
mm-hmm.
and it had the trailer for that Fantastic Four movie and the trailer for the Shaquille O'Neal Genie movie.
Yep.
Not Shaquille O'Neal, the Sinbad Genie movie.
Sinbad. Sinbad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now I'm with you. Now now it's well, we didn't even get into the Marvel and DC stuff, did we?
No,
Uh, let's save it for next time. But yeah, if you liked my opinions, you can find my opinions at fromthebottomend.com, or if you want to be extra spicy, go to the pfunkprophecies.com. I do I do write prolifically. I haven't in a few months because I've been very busy trying to promote an album, but I'm hoping to get back to writing. You can go read my critique of Obi-Wan and all that fun stuff there on my personal website from the bottom end or the P-Funk Prophecies, whichever one you want. It'll take you there.
that's awesome. All right, man. Well, thank you for taking the time with us. And remember, you can find more podcasts like this over on lovethynerd.com, through the podcast network, through the YouTube, all the things. And I appreciate you taking time with me, man. Thank you.
Man, I appreciate you, and God bless you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.